Good evening, and the image you're seeing there is actor Jack Nance playing Henry and kissing the lady next door in his bed bathtub. Yeah, seems weird, but it's a surrealist film, so it's got lots of images like that. Yeah, Eraserhead. I saw Eraserhead a couple of days ago, and I just had to do a review on it. I think it's a masterpiece. It's one of the most amazing films I've ever seen. And I would say my third favorite film of all time after American Beauty and Gravity. So the movie is totally surreal. It doesn't have a plot, so to speak. Well, it kind of does. But it's about this man named Henry, the picture I just showed you. And he may or may not be schizophrenic. It's never really explained. But the whole movie is totally told through images. There's a few lines of dialogue, but almost nothing at all. The whole movie centers around this character, Henry. He lives in this derelict building surrounded by mounds of dirt. There's no vegetation anywhere, really, just a few scraggly trees here and there. And he lives in a very bleak apartment with no pictures on the wall. All he has for company is like this hissing radiator. And one day he gets a call, or his neighbor tells him, and she's the really hot neighbor that in the picture I just showed you, tells him that his girlfriend or one night stand, I'm not sure which, has called and invited him to dinner with her parents. And when he gets there, he finds out that Mary's become pregnant and had a baby, but it's not an ordinary baby. It's terribly mutated and doesn't even look human by the time you see it. And so the hallucinations begin pretty much right away in this film. It starts with Henry kind of floating it looks like he's floating in space, kind of superimposed over this planet, which looks like a beat-up asteroid, basically. And inside this planet, there's a man looking out of a broken window, and he's really dirty and filthy. And he has these 3 levers in front of him. And Henry's mouth kind of opens in a silent scream, and what looks like this long sperm comes out. And the man on the planet pulls the levers one after another. And then you see Henry's sperm fall into this pool of white liquid, in this kind of round pool that's on the planet, and that's how the film begins. And then you're thrust into Henry's reality, or unreality, if you want to call it that. And basically Henry begins to descend into a waking nightmare. Mary's parents insist that they move in together, and they bring the baby to the apartment, and it wails and cries inconsolably, and to the point that Mary just has had enough and she just gets up and leaves. At which point Henry is left alone with this child, which, like I said before, is horribly mutated, so it doesn't even look like a child at all. Although I don't know for sure, I'm pretty sure that Henry is schizophrenic in this film, and the movie is told completely through his mind. It could be about his intense fears of being a parent in such a dystopian future. Baby may not even be a real baby. It may be metaphorical for all his sins and all his wrongdoings coming back to haunt him, so to speak. I'm not sure. I mean, it's the kind of film that's left totally open to interpretation. I've read many different interpretations on it. But my interpretation is that he is schizophrenic because he has a lot of the characteristics of it. A lot of the hallucinations he has are based on things he sees in his own reality. Like the mounds of dirt, he has them in his room too, with these scraggly trees growing out of them. And the radiator is very comforting to him in his loneliness. He always hears it hissing and gurgling. And he comes to imagine that there is a lady living in the radiator who is singing to him about heaven and how everything is fine, and it kind of represents bliss and peace for him from his nightmare. The movie is shot entirely in black and white, but it's very beautiful, the black and white. Just the contrast, the uses of light and shadow in the film are extraordinary. The film has a very, like, the soundtrack is mostly just sound effects. There's not much musical score. There's a couple of kind of almost carnival or kind of, what do you call it, like polka type songs in the film, but they're in the background, kind of like they're, it's just on a scratchy record player, kind of. And the polka also comes into his fantasies when he sees a woman in the radiator as well. So, and as I said before, the hallucinations keep getting worse and worse in the film, until he's pretty much hallucinating everything. Like, it's all totally in his mind. He ends up having an affair with the lady who lives across from him, and in his mind he sees himself making love to her in his bed, except the bed has become a bathtub, as I showed you in this image earlier, right there. You can see that. And as they sink down into it, it's just her hair floating there, and she herself sees the planetoid that was seen at the beginning of the film. And she's horrified by it, so she kind of backs away into the shadows. I don't think she becomes pregnant, but I don't know. So, yeah, it's hard to talk about this film without totally giving away all the images in it, so there's going to be a few spoilers. The most striking image to me is near the end of the film, when Henry it becomes totally immersed in the fantasy of being inside the radiator with this woman who has really swollen cheeks, almost like a chipmunk, and she's singing, you know, in heaven everything is fine, you've got your good things, I've got mine. And she's stepping on all these sperm-like things that are around her, which I guess represent his sperm that he's cast off, because he's, you know, he's terrified to impregnate anyone else because of how hideous his baby is. So the whole film has a lot of very sexual connotations. Lots of imagery of holes, like openings, almost like, at one point it's almost like a vaginal opening, and there's this first person perspective of kind of going out into the light out of this round opening. And there's tons of images like that in the film. Lots of circular images, openings, mounds of dirt with blood coming out of them, which could represent the female mound, you know, the labia, or it could represent... some people think it represents Christ on the cross, the mound of dirt, because of the tree that comes out of it, and then the blood coming down represents Christ's blood being shed for Henry's sins. It's up to you how you want to interpret it. So, and then there's this really weird scene when Henry's head pops off, and it almost looks like this phallic kind of thing underneath, and this mound of dirt starts bleeding onto his severed head, and this little boy picks the head up and takes it to a factory, and they start making erasers out of it, which I guess is why it's called Eraserhead. But you find out that he was hallucinating the whole thing, because it shows Henry in bed later, kind of covering his face with his arms. So there are a lot of very obvious hallucinations in the film, but there are points too where you're wondering if it's hallucination or reality as well. So it really messes with your head. Ultimately, I find the film to be very psychologically terrifying. Like, I would not want to be in Henry's shoes in this film. Everything he goes through, just, you can see the terror in his eyes. Jack Nance was extraordinary in this. He's one of the saddest, most kind of empathetic characters ever created. By the end, the most terrifying part of it, and there's going to be a spoiler here again, is when it's revealed what the baby truly is, and it is not a human baby at all. It becomes this monster in Henry's mind, and it ultimately seems to destroy him. And in the end, Henry ends up going to heaven, you know, that the lady in the radiator always sang about. Whether that's a metaphor for suicide, I'm not sure. But you could look at it that way. This is not a film for everyone, that's for sure. Like, some people, they might look at it and have no clue what it's about. It would go totally over their head. It really depends on your mindset and if you're into surrealism or not. It deeply affected me. Like, I had nightmares from it when I watched it the first time, and I can't stop watching it. Like, it's a compulsively watchable film. Every time I watch it, I feel like I learn something new about it. And I think that's what truly great art does. It's meant to make you think, to expand your mind, to make you ask questions, and that film does all that for me. It was truly groundbreaking, especially for the time it came out. At the time, David Lynch, the director, had a very hard time finding people to market the film because no one understood it. But today it's considered a total cinematic masterpiece and is part of the Criteria collection. So yeah, that's my review on Eraserhead. If you like surrealist films, I highly recommend it. And even if you don't, I think it's worth a watch just to see if you get anything out of it. You may find it boring, you may have to turn it off after a while, and it just depends on your mindset. But give it a chance. I mean, it's the kind of movie you really have to pay attention to. You can't just watch it, without really... Like, you have to engage yourself in it, otherwise you may not get much out of it. It's a very psychological experience. So, that's my review on Eraserhead. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll have another one coming in a few days. Have a good night, everyone, and enjoy. Bye-bye.